This is it. This may sound repetitive, and I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe in the future. I'm constantly looking for new information about video games and social media addiction. So maybe in the future we will find that I will be able to find another text to use on the last chapter. I'm not exactly sure where this information came from. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Addiction is any pleasurable behavior that renders a person unable to stop once started and which is pursued in spite of negative consequences. That's an addiction. Over time, the individual develops a tolerance to a given level of the addictive activity or substance. They stop feeling satisfied at a certain level of use and require more activity or substance to get the original euphoria. When unable to engage in the addiction, the person enters withdrawal. Gaming addiction is often said to be present when an individual has. Now, you have to remember that most of this was written before the DSM-5 came out with an admittance that gaming addiction did exist. So this was a psychologist trying to convince the psychiatric community, the American Psychiatric Association, that the gaming addiction actually worked. So some of this is part of the argument. When they came out with the DSM-5 TR text revision, that's what TR stands for. They admitted that there is a gaming addiction that needed to be dealt with. Now, why in the world didn't they haven't they had it since the DSM-4? Well, the reason is because video games are relatively new, and this is a new type of addiction that seems to be capturing our children, and because of that, it took the psychological and psychiatric community an extended length of time to admit that there was a problem. They needed the research behind it. They needed to see results that prove that the addictions did exist. Gaming addiction is often said to be present when an individual has completely lost control over their game playing and their excessive playing behavior has had a detrimental effect on all aspects of their life and compromises their job and or educational activities, interpersonal relationships, hobbies, general health, and psychological well-being. Now, we know from everything that we've read up to this point that this is primarily a problem of adolescence and early adulthood, and it happens with males more than it happens with females. These two criteria, impaired control and harmful consequences, are regarded as fundamentally important criteria for addiction. An alternative model of addictive behavior has proposed 6 features or components of gaming addiction. To indicate addiction, it is thought that these criteria must be sustained for a period of between 3 to 6 months. Now, this is when they were trying to determine what the criteria should be. Salience. This occurs when gaming becomes the most important activity in a person's life, dominating their thoughts, preoccupation and cognitive distortions, emotions, cravings, and behavior deterioration of normal behaviors. An addicted gamer is obsessed with all aspects of video games and, when not playing, will be anticipating or planning the next playing session. Mood modification. This refers to changes in a person's mood state that occur as a result of gaming. Mood change may involve a subjective feeling of euphoria as well as an increase in physiological arousal, increased heart rate, muscle tension, or shaky hands, or alternatively, a tranquilizing feeling of calm or numbing sensation. And I'm guessing this guy's numbed out. Tolerance. This refers to the process whereby increasing amounts of gaming are required to achieve the former mood modifying effects. This means that players gradually increase the amount of time they spend engaged in gaming. It could be argued that addicted gamers build up their tolerance to the point that they will end a playing session only when they have become mentally or physically exhausted. Withdrawal. These are the aversive mood states and/or physical effects that occur when gaming is suddenly discontinued or reduced. Psychological withdrawal symptoms include feelings of frustration, irritability, and flattened affect. Withdrawal motivates the individual to play video games on a regular basis and to minimize periods of absence from a video game in order to alleviate these unpleasant feeling states. Relapse. This refers to the tendency for the player to make repeated reversions to earlier patterns of gaming, and for even the most extreme patterns typical of the height of excessive gaming to be quickly restored after periods of abstinence or moderation. Relapse usually indicates that the individual has lost personal agency over their behavior. Now, if you remember when we talked about Amy Winehouse, well, I don't know that we talked about Amy Winehouse in here, but Amy Winehouse had abstained for 6 weeks before she went on her last alcohol binge. Why did she do that? She did that to lose her level of tolerance, to lower her level of tolerance so that she would get a better high when she got drunk. And unfortunately, of course, she drank too much and poisoned herself to death. Conflict or harm. This is the last one, I think. Yeah, this is the last one. This is the 6th one. This refers to the negative consequences of excessive gaming. Harm includes conflicts between the addicted video game player and other people, family members and friends, other activities, jobs, schools, social life, hobbies, and interests, and from within the addict themselves, psychological distress. Large sample studies generally report prevalence values below 10%. A study conducted in the United States on a national representative sample of teenagers, as well as a large sample of Singaporean children, both reported a problematic game use of approximately 9%. And this is the figure that we keep seeing, 9%, 8.5% in the United States, 9% in the rest of the world. Results of another representative study in Germany showed that 3% of the males, 0.3% of females students were diagnosed as dependent on video games, while another 4.7% of males and 0.5% of female students were at risk of becoming dependent. And that would be what? 7, 8, 8.5. There you go. In a large Hungarian online gamer sample, 3.4% of gamers belonged to the high-risk group of problematic gaming and another 15.2% to the medium-risk group. A proportion of 4.6% of Hungarian adolescents, approximately 16 years old, belonging to a national sample were classified as high-risk users. According to an online survey examining all types of online gamers, and the number that they had were 4,374, the mean age was 21 years, and participants were mostly male, about 91%, and single, 66%. Their average weekly game time varied between less than 7 hours, about 10% of the 4,374, and more than 42 hours, also about 10%, with most of the gamers playing 15 to 27 hours weekly. That was about 35%. 15 to 27 hours. That's at least between 2 and 4 hours a day. 16% of all gamers were playing professionally. In other words, they participate in competitions and earn money if they win. The majority of the sample, 79%, had a clear gaming preference, namely they played one single game type most of the time. Data regarding the 3 main game types give a more nuanced view. The proportion of female gamers is the lowest in the case of massively multiplayer online first-person shooter, MMOFPS games, 1 to 2%, and the highest in massively multiplayer online role-playing games, MMORPGs, about 15 to 30%. This is the female gamers. MMOFPS users are the youngest, between 18 and 19.8 years. While both massively multiplayer online real-time strategy, 22 years, and MMORPG players, 21 to 27 years, are significantly older. Among the three main groups, MMORPG role-playing gamers spend the most time playing. Since MMORPGs are the most researched games, most likely because they allow players to interact, to form friendships, create communities, and work together to accomplish a variety of goals, there is additional information regarding such players that it is still unknown in the case of other game types. So when we look at the statistics, mostly what we're looking at are people that are playing MMORPGs. Half of MMORPG players work full-time. 22.2% are students, 14.8% are homemakers, 89.9% of whom were female. 36% of the gamers are married, and 22% of them have children. Overall, the demographic composition of MMORPG users is quite varied and probably more diverse than the composition of MMORTS strategy and MMOFPS shooter users, although this needs to be empirically established. And of course, this is just one study. There's now a relatively large number of studies all indicating that excessive gameplay, video gameplay can lead to a wide variety of negative psychosocial consequences for a minority of affected individuals. These include sacrificing work, education, hobbies, socializing, time with partner, family, and sleep, increased stress and absence of real-life relationships, lower psychosocial well-being and loneliness, poorer social skills, decreased academic achievement, increased inattention, aggressive oppositional behavior and hostility, maladaptive coping, decreases in verbal memory performance, maladaptive cognitions, and suicidal ideations. In addition to the reported negative psychosocial consequences, there are also many reported health and medical consequences that may result from excessive video game playing. These include epileptic seizures, auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, enuresis, encopresis, that's wetting yourself and pooping yourself, obesity, wrist pain, neck pain, elbow pain, tenosynovitis, also called nintendinitis, blisters, calluses, sore tendons, and numbness of fingers, hand-arm vibration syndrome, sleep abnormalities, psychosomatic challenges, and repetitive strain injuries. Taken together, this relatively long list of potential psychosocial and medical negative consequences clearly indicates that excessive gaming is an issue irrespective of whether it is an addiction. It also suggests that more extensive recognition is needed of the wide range of potential negative and life-limiting consequences of excessive video play. A number of studies have examined the role of different personality factors, comorbidity factors, and biological factors and their association with gaming addiction. In relation to personality traits, gaming addiction has been shown to have associations with neuroticism, aggression and hostility, avoidant and schizoid interpersonal tendencies, loneliness and introversion, social inhibition, boredom inclination, sensation seeking, diminished agreeableness, diminished self-control and narcissistic personality traits, low self-esteem, state and trait anxiety, and low emotional intelligence. So there have been a lot of studies, and the reason is because they have seen select individuals who have drifted into really serious problems. And because psychologists and medical personnel have seen this, they have tried to determine whether this can potentially be a problem in the future. This is one instance where a brand new idea, a brand new task has caused psychological and medical problems. And the medical and psychological community have tried to get their finger on the pulse of what is going on. This is what we need to do as psychologists. If we recognize a problem and it's a new problem, rather than deny that it exists, we need to look at it as if it is as if there is something that we can do, because there is something that we can do if we acknowledge it. Remember, just like with any substance abuse, the first stage of helping someone is them admitting that there's a problem, and this has been the problem all along. Parents have been using video games as babysitters ever since video games came out. They figured we can handle it. The kid figured, hey, it's just a lot of fun. This is getting out of my mother's hair so that she can make supper or take care of business. And it has turned into an addiction. And it's been recognized. And now, of course, the DSM-5-TR has actually recognized it. Research has also shown gaming addiction to be associated with a variety of comorbid disorders. This includes attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, depression, social phobia, school phobia, and various psychosomatic symptoms. Through use of functional MRIs, biological research has shown that gaming addicts show similar neural processes and increased activity in brain areas associated with substance-related addictions and other behavioral addictions such as pathological gambling, significant activation in the left occipital lobe, parahippocampal gyrus, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, nucleus accumbens, right orbital frontal cortex, bilateral anterior cingulate, medial frontal cortex, and the caudate nucleus. We know that video game addiction is very similar to a lot of addictions. Sex addiction, gambling addiction, shopping addiction. This is a behavioral addiction that we need to keep an eye on. Prior to the publication of the latest DSM-5, there had been some debate as to whether internet addiction should be introduced into the text as a separate disorder. Alongside this, there was debate as to whether those researching in the online addiction field should be researching generalized internet use and or the potential addictive activities that can be engaged in on the internet, for example, gambling, video gaming, sex, shopping, etc. Following these debates, the Substance Use Disorder Work Group recommended that the DSM-5 include a subtype of problematic internet use, for example, internet gaming disorder in Section 3, emerging measures and models, as an area that needed future research before being included in future editions of the DSM. According to Petrie and O'Brien, internet gaming disorder will not be included as a separate mental disorder until one, the defining features of internet gaming disorder have been identified. Two, reliability and validity of specific internet gaming disorder criteria have been obtained cross-culturally. Three, prevalence rates have been determined in representative epidemiological samples across the world. And four, etiology and associated biological features have been evaluated. One of the key reasons that internet gaming disorder was not included in the main text of the DSM-5 was that the working group concluded that no standard diagnostic criteria were used to assess gaming addiction across these many studies. A review of instruments assessing problematic pathological and or addictive gaming by King and colleagues reported that 18 different screening instruments had been developed and that these had been used in 63 quantitative studies comprising 58,415 participants. King et al. Review identified both strengths and weaknesses of these screening instruments. The main strengths of the instrumentation included the brevity and ease of scoring, excellent psychometric properties such as convergent validity and internal consistency, and three, robust data that will aid the development of standardized norms for adolescent populations. However, the main weaknesses identified in the instrumentation included one, core addiction indicators being inconsistent across studies, two, a general lack of temporal dimension, three, inconsistent cutoff scores relating to clinical status, four, poor and or inadequate inter-rater reliability and predicted validity, and five, untested or inconsistent dimensionality. Now, the problem that we are having with all of this research is that we're being pulled in two different directions. One, we know that these kids have a problem. Two, the gaming industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, is saying there is no problem. Now, we've seen this before. We see this every time we discover an addiction, other than opioids and crack cocaine. When we're talking about the alcohol lobby, they were saying, well, alcoholism isn't that bad. Remember, the tobacco lobby owned the research on tobacco up until the 1960s. And in the 1960s, we finally realized that all of these people that were dying in their 40s and 50s of lung cancer, it was because they were chain smokers. Oh, wait a minute, that's not our fault. That they were around other environmental problems. Yeah, right. Okay. So we've got the people making money off of this stuff, and we have the people that are being addicted and dying sometimes, not usually with gaming addiction, but we do have people that are dying, and and so what's more important, the money or people's lives? And the answer is, until there are enough people that die, then it's the money that's the most important. And this is one of the reasons why we have the pros and we have the cons. Okay, so now the gaming industry is saying, wait a minute, the research that you're doing, look at all these negatives. It's just not consistent over time. A recent review by Kiraly and colleagues argued that some researchers consider video games as the starting point for examining the characteristics of this specific disorder, while others consider the internet as the main platform that unites different addictive internet activities, including online games. Recent studies have made an effort to integrate both approaches. Consequently, internet gaming disorder can either be viewed as a specific type of video game addiction or as a variant of internet addiction or as an independent diagnosis. The 9 proposed criteria for internet gaming disorder, of which 5 or more need to be endorsed and resulting in clinical significant impairment. These are the 9. 1, preoccupation with internet games, salience. 2, withdrawal symptoms when internet gaming is taken away, withdrawal. 3, the need to spend increasing amounts of time engaged in internet gaming, tolerance. 4, unsuccessful attempts to control participation in internet gaming, relapse and loss of control. Number 5, loss of interest in hobbies and entertainment as a result of and with the exception of internet gaming, conflict. Continued excessive use of internet games despite knowledge of psychosocial problems, conflict, deception of family members, therapists, or other regarding the amount of internet gaming, conflict. Number 8, use of the internet gaming to escape or relieve a negative mood modification. And 9, loss of significant relationship, job, or educational or career opportunity because of participation in internet games, conflict. Clinical interventions and treatment for problematic and or addictive gaming vary considerably in the literature, with most of the very few published studies employing some type of cognitive behavioral therapy, pharmacotherapy, and or self-devised psychological interventions. Han et al. Presented some successful case studies regarding pharmacotherapeutic treatment. After a 6-week and 12-week period of bupropion, bupropion sustained release treatment, problematic gamers showed significant improvement both in decreased problem behavior and decreased depression scores. The researchers' pharmacological choice had been driven by similarities in neurological activity of different behavioral addictions. Currently, the evidence base in the treatment of problematic and/or addictive gaming is limited. Furthermore, the lack of consistent approaches to treating problematic video game playing and video game addiction makes it difficult to produce any definitive conclusions as to the efficacy of treatment, although at this stage, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, as with the treatment of efficacy of other addictions, appears to show good preliminary support. Whoops. WOG surveyed a random sample of 5,000 U.S. mental health professionals. 229 participants completed the questionnaire. Two-thirds had treated someone with excessive computer use problems in the year prior to the survey. WOG also reported that problematic gaming was most common among 11 to 17-year-old clients. This client group may be more likely to present in therapy, as anecdotal evidence suggests they are typically forced by concerned parents to attend treatment. Adult gaming addicts may not seek treatment or seek treatment at a later stage for other psychological problems, such as depression, that develop after experiencing the severe negative consequences of gaming. In Southeast Asia, there appears to be significant demand for treatment for online-related problems, including gaming addiction. The South Korean government has reportedly established a network of over 140 counseling centers for treatment of online addiction. In Western countries, gaming addiction clinics have also started to emerge in places such as Holland and the UK. There are also treatment groups that are modeled in 12-step self-help treatment. For example, Online Gamers Anonymous. Block suggested that the diagnosis for online problems, including excessive gaming, should be included in the DSM-5 as a compulsive-impulsive spectrum disorder. Publication of clinical criteria in future DSM would facilitate and enhance standardization of research and treatment in the gaming studies field. It may also help minimize the potential for inappropriate clustering of clinical behaviors within an overly broad classification of problematic online behavior. There are also strong links between online gaming, gambling, non-gambling fantasy games, role-playing games, board games, and card games. These may be an additional cause for concern as youth migrate from free gaming sites to online gambling sites. Video game playing also does not occur in a vacuum, but is a single behavior engaged in alongside many others. Research needs to examine links between video games and other risk behaviors, for example, gambling, drug and alcohol use, seatbelt use, poor school performance, conduct problems, truancy, delinquency, violence, and sexual activity. In January of 2015, 2 men died in an internet cafe in Taiwan. The first 38-year-old man died after playing for 5 days straight from fatigue and physical exhaustion. The second man, 32 years old, died after playing for 3 days straight from cardiac arrest and exhaustion. One of the most infamous video game death cases was the death of a 23-year-old who died clutching a keyboard and mouse while staring ahead due to rigor mortis at an internet cafe in New Taipei City's Sanchong district in February 2012. And of course, that's in Taiwan. I'm saying, of course. I know that it's in Taiwan. Taipei is the capital of Taiwan. Budding computer programmer Chris Staniforth, who was only 20 years old, died from playing too much Halo. His 12-hour marathon Xbox sessions caused a fatal pulmonary embolism, a type of blood clot that can occur when someone sits in the same position for several hours. Chris had just been accepted to Leicester University to study game design when he collapsed outside a UK job center after complaining of a low heart rate. He had no previous medical conditions. An unidentified 30-year-old man in Beijing died after spending 3 days immersed in an online game at a local internet cafe. He lost consciousness and was rushed to a hospital, but could not be revived. According to reports, the man had spent more than 10,000 won, approximately $1,500, on gaming in the months before his death. A 28-year-old man from South Korea died while playing StarCraft for 50 hours with only few short breaks. The cause of death was presumed to be heart failure stemming from exhaustion. The man, who had eaten very little during his marathon gaming session, only stopped playing to go to the toilet a few times and for brief periods of sleep. He had recently been fired from his job because he kept missing work to play computer games. Gerald Spannenberg, an avid World of Warcraft player, died while raiding with his World of Warcraft guild after getting into a heated argument during the raid. His cause of death was an abdominal aneurysm, presumably brought about by long periods of sitting at the computer combined with the stress of the argument. After Gerald suddenly went silent during the raid, he was auto-logged out of the game after 10 minutes of inactivity and did not log in again. His guildies assumed he was being childish and had deserted them, so they kicked him out of the guild and kept on raiding. It wasn't until 3 weeks later that they learned what happened from Gerald's daughter and felt horrible about it, of course. A young Chinese girl known by her nickname Snowly died after playing World of Warcraft for several days straight during a national holiday. Snowly was a key member of her World of Warcraft guild who said the girl had been preparing for a very difficult raid and had had very little rest in the days prior. An in-game funeral was held for Snowly in the week after her death, but sadly the event was overshadowed by the death of another popular World of Warcraft player during the same week. How much time on the computer is appropriate for a child? How much gaming is too much? What games are okay? When should they play on the computer? Is there room in their schedule for homework, sports, exercise, time with the family and friends? No screen time for children under 2 years of age. And we did this last week. We talked about this last week. But let's go over it again. No screen time for children under 2 years of age. 1 to 2 hours daily screen time for preschool aged children. 2 hours for elementary aged children. 2 to 3 hours of daily screen time for middle and high school aged teens. Screen time means both television and computer entertainment. No television, internet, or gaming console in your child's room. This is really important. Make a plan scheduling gaming times and choices in advance. A gaming plan helps everyone choose and use gaming carefully. Address fairness issues with siblings. Older siblings may have different limits from their younger siblings. Limit children's total screen time, including time playing video and computer games and surfing the internet. Adding television viewing to screen time is optional. Parents should help their teens and children choose video games that are appropriate for their ages and interests. Parents should check content ratings and parental advisories for all media. Explain any objections to media choices. Explain why and help them make appropriate choices. Be aware of what games your child is playing and what games are their favorite. Parents should sit in on sessions to better understand the nature of the gaming experience and witness their behavior. Be aware of the language and gaming slang being used. Ask for definitions. WTF means the same to them as it does to you, and it ain't good. Develop a list of enjoyable activities that can fill the void of screen time. The most common reason children cite for playing video games is boredom. A parent who expects the to limit time to be filled with chores and homework is probably mistaken, and the child may feel cheated. This may mean that the parent will have to join in the new fun activity, such as board games. If the gaming limits creates conflict, the parents should not negotiate, as that will create a situation where the limits are perpetually expanded until the limits are meaningless. If talk is unsuccessful, then professional help may be needed. Professional help may be required if the child has any of the following problems and is using gaming as a means of focusing: ADHD, learning disabilities, mood disorders, addiction issues, anger management. And that's what her problem is. This is a article from Hartman, Jung, and Vorderer. What determines video game use? The impact of users' habits, addictive tendencies, and intentions to play. This is from 2012, a bit dated. The Hartman et al. Study explored the role of intentions, habits, and addictive tendencies in people's video game use. Now, remember, Hartman was doing a study when he saw that there was a problem. This was in 2012 when internet games started to explode. Before that, it was mostly console games. Now, all of a sudden, there were internet gaming that took place, and he saw a problem. This is 12 years ago. And so that's why he did his study, Hartman and his colleagues. The survey data was collected in two ways. There were 351 people that they were dealing with, measuring causal factors and outcomes. Results of mediation analyses reveal a positive impact of both habits and addictive tendencies on video game use that is partly affected by users' intentions. Moderation analyses suggest that the impact of habits but not of addictive tendencies on video game use decreases unless users intend to play. Taken together, these findings suggest that users' video game habits, addictive tendencies, and intentions jointly determine video game use. Okay, there's a reason why I started this class. It started, the 321 was actually 221, it was cinema therapy. And I decided that some of my students had told me that this is a real problem that we need to talk about. So that's why I started researching cinema therapy, social media addiction, and alternative platforms. When I started looking at gaming addiction, one of the things I discovered was that they were looking at three different things, and that was part of the argument, and that was part of the reason, the rationalization for not doing anything about it, because there were console games, there were internet games, and now we have virtual reality games, and that's why I call it alternative platforms, because it is on the internet, but it's on a console that you play yourself. It's a multiplayer game, internet gaming, and then it's this new virtual reality stuff. Okay, so yes, this has been a problem. It's a problem on the reservation, and it's a problem that people need to be aware of. And that's one of the reasons why I started this class. So I know it seems to be kind of negative. The things I'm talking about are kind of negative, but the reality is that there are negative things about gaming. And there are things that we need to be aware of. We can use cinema therapy. Cinema therapy works. It shows people what potentially might happen if you go off the deep end with your gaming or with whatever, with romance or it shows you things. It's a good way of demonstrating what might potentially happen. That's cinema therapy. Social media, people do Facebook too much. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. TikTok seems to be the common problem right now. YouTube. And of course, the gaming is a potential problem, and that's why I started. That's why I started researching this class, and that's why this class is in the curriculum. So if you have any complaints about it, I know I only say negative things about most of this stuff, but that's because, for 90% everything's fine. Well, for 91.5% everything's fine, but for that 8.5% in the United States, 9% worldwide, we got a serious problem. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about the second one. This is another piece of research that was done trying to show that there is a problem. And it's difficult to talk about studies that aren't longitudinal studies because people were saying, the industry was saying, hey, look, there's no problem. Don't worry about it. This goes away. This is like uh, what kids do. Boys will be boys, that kind of stuff. Well, they needed to do longitudinal studies to show that they were incorrect, and this is one of the studies that they did. This is Ribene and Bayer. This study investigated the causes of gaming addiction in an attempt to explain why video game playing as widespread phenomenon leads to a comparatively small percentage of addicted players. So they were trying to show, well, if it's only 8.5% or 9%, that's not so many. In this paper, the results of a two-wave longitudinal study comprising a sample of students from grades 4 to 9, there were 406 of them, are presented looking at family, media, and school-related risk factors. And that's Rabin and Bayer right there. In the fourth grade, 34% of children had their own TV, 29% had their own computer, 23% had a gaming console, and 59% had a handheld gaming console. Video games were used for 56 minutes per day. For boys, it was 76 minutes. For girls, it was only 38 minutes. This guy is playing Fortnite. Fortnite's a really strange game. I've watched my grandson play it. They seem to have this axe that they swing and they knock down walls. It's just a little strange. 33% of children had already used games which were only suitable for players above the age of 16 or 18. 33% were playing games they shouldn't have been playing. In ninth grade, adolescents used video games 137 minutes per day, boys 207 minutes, and girls 79 minutes. 10 adolescents, 2.6%, were classified as being at risk, and 5 adolescents, 1.3%, were identified as being addicted to video games. So instead of the 8.5% that we have seen before, it's almost 5%. No, it's almost 4%. The relevance of school-related variables is emphasized by the fact that well-being at school proves to be a protective factor. Social involvement and emotional experience in school could prove to be important predictors of gaming addiction. Children with a difficult position in real life may well be entering virtual worlds in an inadequate attempt to self-regulation. A lack of social involvement and limited well-being at school are compensated for in a dysfunctional manner by the recognition and self-efficacy experienced in video games, though the risk of long-term psychological addiction increases. And I imagine that the gaming industry grabbed this piece of research and said, hey, look, it's not so bad. Parental devotion and supervision did not prove to be significant for the estimation of risk. This was shown for media-related parent supervision. The results of this study provided no basis for arguing that this is a promising strategy for the age group of 10 years and older. In other words, parents after age 10, there's not a whole lot you can do. Two conclusions can be drawn from this. Approaches aimed at parental responsibility and media-related risk reduction would appear to be useful only if they begin significantly earlier than the 10th year of life, at preschool age. That's when you can control them, and that's when you will be able to control their game playing in the future. With recourse to previous research results and the data from this study, it can be concluded that prevention concepts are inextricably tied to the characteristic psychological vulnerabilities of children who are at risk, and thus should be geared toward enhancing psychological health. Our data suggests that distinctive features in prevention concepts are not sensitive for the development of gaming addiction. Banning media devices from children's rooms or to adhere to specific gaming times thus appear not to be very promising, at least for children aged 10 years and over. The factors and problems underlying gaming addiction are obviously of a fundamental nature. They primarily affect the personality and the motives underlying the gaming behavior. With respect to the type of games used, violent content could turn out to be less crucial than specific characteristics of the game that are important for keeping the user playing for extended periods of time. So, in other words, they're saying if you've lost them after age 10, there's nothing you can do, and taking it out of their rooms isn't going to help. That's what they're saying. And I imagine that the gaming industry just loved this piece of research and thought, well, we'll finance some more research by Rabin and Bayer. Although Gaming Time predicts gaming addiction in a model that only includes media usage variables in the full longitudinal model, the effect disappears. This supports the assumption that gaming time is a weak predictor of gaming addiction. In our cross-sectional model, problematic video game use was predicted by elevated gaming time. High gaming time in childhood could lead to problematic video game use, which in turn heightens the risk for the development of gaming addiction. These children are endangered not because of their elevated gaming time, but because of the negative consequences they are willing to accept to sustain their gaming behavior. So they're saying that it's personality type, and once they start, it is this addictive personality that they have developed that is going to cause the gaming addiction. With respect to school-related performance indicators, our study shows that gaming addiction cannot be predicted by means of either school grades or one's self-concept of ability to perform at school. However, school-related deficiencies in performance could be the consequence rather than the cause of the gaming addiction. Children who do not participate much in their classmates' social activities and who do not feel comfortable at school have an elevated risk of the development of gaming addiction as well as of subsequent academic failure. The data show that 15-year-old video game addicts had already exhibited a number of specific risk factors at the age of 10. Students from single-parent families seem to be particularly at risk, as are students with low experience school well-being and with a weaker social integration in class. The data also indicate that problematic use of video games in childhood increases the risk of gaming addiction in adolescence. Male students are especially vulnerable for developing gaming addiction, and we have seen that over and over and over again. This is one from, this is where they looked at bupropion. Yeah, I said it right that time. Okay. Bupropion has been used in the treatment of patients with substance dependence. Han et al. In 2010 hypothesized that 6 weeks of bupropion treatment would decrease craving for internet gameplay as well as video game cue-induced brain activity in patients with internet video game addiction. 19 male students, 11 diagnosed with internet video game addiction, and 8 controls were used in the study. The addicted subjects played StarCraft for an average of 30 hours a week and the controls for 3 hours per week. A baseline functional MRI was taken of all subjects using the cue StarCraft. Between the two groups, there were significant differences in the terms of craving for playing StarCraft. The addicted group were then asked to take a maintenance dose of bupropion for 6 weeks while their StarCraft gameplay was being monitored. After 6 weeks of bupropion treatment in the addicted group, maladaptive behaviors because of excessive playing internet video game were improved. 6 individuals in the addicted group showed improved daily routines to the degree family members found to be acceptable. 4 addicted individuals were no longer absent from school during the treatment period. After 6 weeks of bupropion treatment in the addicted group, there were significant decreases in terms of craving for playing StarCraft, decreased amount 23.6%, and total playing game 35.4%. And that is it. If you have any suggestions, I'm going to read your papers, and maybe I'll get some suggestions from there. But I'm going to continue doing this. The virtual reality thing hasn't really hit the market yet. Maybe it will in the next year. Well, actually, I'm teaching this next semester. It's possible that I will revise some of these chapters, or some of the information. I am not going to use a textbook in the next class either. Um, so drop me a line if you think that there's something I need to change, or something I need to emphasize. I know I don't say very much positive about these problems. And the reason I started it, like I said, I started researching this topic before it was recognized as a problem. And that is one of I wanted to show that this is a problem and that this is something that we needed to deal with. So that's why I started this class, the 321 class. So, okay, well, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you later if you take any more of my classes. So, adios for now.